I came back to America after 12 years of operations that never officially happened. No welcome home. No parade. No flag-draped speeches. Just a rental car, a contractor's jacket, and a name the world believed was buried overseas. My name is Micah Reed. I'm 62 years old. And for the last 12 years, I worked in places that don't show up on maps doing things that don't show up in history books. Fallujah, Mogadishu, the Afghan mountains. I survived explosions that folded steel, firefights that lasted until dawn, and a helicopter crash that should have killed everyone on board. None of that prepared me for what waited at the end of Ocean Boulevard 15 years earlier. After my first serious contract payout, I bought a house in Loyola, California. White stucco walls, Spanish tile roof, infinity pool staring straight into the Pacific. I paid cash, $6.8 million. I bought it for one person. My mother, Emma Reed. She raised me alone after my father died when I was 7. 2 jobs, no complaints, never missed a football game, never once made me feel like a burden. That house was supposed to be her, rewards and sets, quiet mornings, peace. Before flying in, I called my brother Daniel, told him I was coming home. Sounded tough, too cheerful, too quick. He said Mum was doing great, said the house was perfect, said everything was exactly how I left it. He lied. When I arrived, the front gate was wide open. A catering truck sat in the driveway. Music drifted through the air, laughter, glasses clinking, the sound of people who didn't belong. I moved along the side path, instincts taking over, boots silent on gravel. I expected a surprise, a hug, maybe tears. Instead, I saw a party. 50, maybe 60 people around the pool, designer swimsuits, bottles of champagne worth more than my first car, and weaving through them was my mother. 70-8 years old, wearing a maid's uniform. Her hand shook as she carried a tray of drinks. Her posture was stiff, bent with pain I didn't know she had. She nearly dropped the tray once, apologized over and over to a woman young enough to be her granddaughter. I stood frozen behind a palm tree, heart pounding harder than it ever had in combat. This was the woman who worked herself into exhaustion so I could have a future, and now she was being ordered around in the home I bought to protect her. Then I saw Daniel, lying back in a custom teak lounge chair, sunglasses, Cuban cigar, crystal glass in hand, laughing like a king. My mother passed him, struggling with a cool air. He didn't even look at her. Something inside me snapped slowly, quietly, the way steel fractures under pressure. I could have stormed the pool deck. Who would have dragged him into the water? But I didn't survive 12 years of black operations by acting on emotion. I survived by waiting, and as I watched my mother disappear toward the house with shaking steps, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever had happened here, I was going to uncover every last detail, and when I did, no one involved was walking away. I didn't go back to that pool deck. Not yet. Every instinct in me screamed to charge in, rip my brother off that lounge chair and demand answers. But rage is loud, and loud gets people hurt. I'd spent 12 years learning how to dismantle problems quietly, how to win without giving the target time to react. So I did what I always did before a mission. I backed off and gathered until 3 blocks away. There was a small coffee shop with outdoor seating and weak Wi-Fi. I ordered a black coffee I didn't taste, opened my encrypted laptop, and started digging like my life depended on it, because my mother's life did. County property records were first. I typed in the address, 2847 Ocean Boulevard. The ownership name that appeared on the screen wasn't my mother's. It wasn't mine either. It was Daniel Reed's. My stomach turned cold. I stared at the digital deed scrolling down to the signature. My mother's name was on Emma Reed's sign 6 years ago, but I knew her signature the way I knew my own heartbeat. I'd seen it on birthday cards, Christmas letters, handwritten notes tucked into my duffel bag before deployments. This signature was close enough to fool a clerk, but wrong. The loop on the E was too sharp. The slant leaned too aggressively. It looked like someone had studied her handwriting and copied it the way a counterfeiter copies money. I kept her in court documents. 3 years ago, Daniel had filed for legal guardianship of Emma Reed. The paperwork described her as mentally diminished, unable to manage finances, confused and vulnerable, and the supporting medical report, a doctor named Richard Kelly. I searched his name. 2 fraud lawsuits, 1 disciplinary action, a suspended license and reinstated, a pattern of shady clinics and vanishing addresses, a hired pen with a stethoscope. My jaw tightened so hard my teeth hurt. Then I pulled bank statements for 12 years. I'd been wiring my mother $20,000 a month from accounts that didn't connect to my real identity. It was my way of making sure she was safe, even if I couldn't call, even if I couldn't show up. The deposits were there until 6 years ago. After that, the money didn't disappear. It moved, redirected, into Daniel's personal accounts. $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year. Over 6 years, nearly $1.5 million. I sat back in my chair, chest rising and falling slowly. My hand stayed steady, but inside me, something was starting to burn. And then I made the mistake of checking life insurance. Before my first deployment, I'd taken out a $10 million policy. Standard for men in my line of work. If I didn't make it back, at least my family would. My mother was the sole beneficiary. That was the plan. The screen refreshed, and a single line punched me right in the throat. Claim filed. 8 years ago, status paid out beneficiary. Daniel Reed. Acting as guardian executor, they had declared me dead. I opened the claim documents. There was a death certificate. Killed in action. Body unrecoverable. Official stamps. Official signatures. A complete lie with just enough truth around it to pass through the system unnoticed. I stared at the date. 8 years ago. That meant Daniel hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen my identity. He'd stolen my mother's belief that I was alive. And he'd used that grief like a weapon, turning her into a captive inside the very home I bought to protect her. I closed the laptop slowly, like closing a coffin. Outside, the Pacific looked calm, bright, peaceful, like it didn't know monsters could live in million-dollar homes. I sat in my rental car for a long time. Then I took out a burner phone, because I wasn't going to walk into this blind. I wasn't going to guess. I was going to build a case so airtight that Daniel wouldn't just lose the house, he'd lose everything. I didn't sit there debating what to do next in my world. Hesitation gets people killed. I stepped out of the car, let the ocean air hit my face, and made the first call. Marcus Chun answered on the second ring mic. His voice carried surprise. "Concerned you're alive very much," I said, "and I need your help." Marcus had been our team medic back in the day. Smart, calm under pressure. The kind of man you want next to you when everything is on fire. After retiring, he'd gone private high-end security. Surveillance systems, quiet contracts for clients who didn't trust anyone else. "I need full coverage," I told him. "Video, audio, long battery life, discreet." There was a pause. "Residential, my brother's house," I said, "and my mother is in danger." That pause got heavier. "I can have gear ready in 2 hours," Marcus said. "Military. Bay grade, but Mike would whatever you're planning. Don't cross a line." "I won't," I said. That was a lie, or at least a flexible truth. The second call went to Sarah Blackwood. Sarah wasn't just a lawyer, she was a former Marine. Sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous in a courtroom. Years earlier, we'd crossed paths overseas during a situation neither of us ever spoke about. She owed me tell me everything. She said after I summarized the basics, by the time I finished there was ice in her voice. "This is elder abuse," she said. "Fraud. Identity theft. Insurance fraud. Possibly unlawful imprisonment. How fast can you move?" "I'll file emergency motions tonight," she replied. "Guardianship review, asset freeze, protective services." But Mike listened to me carefully. "Do not confront him yet." I wasn't planning to. She exhaled. "Good, give me 12 hours and don't do anything that makes my job harder." The third call went to a number I'd never saved under a name. Just a string of digits memorized years ago. It rang once. "Michael Reed," a calm voice answered. "I was wondering when you'd call." "I need financial visibility," I said. "Everything tied to Daniel Reed. Accounts, shells, assets, no gaps." A short silence. Then, "Personal. You'll have it within 6 hours." The line went dead. I sat back and watched the sky darken over the ocean somewhere behind me. My mother was probably cleaning up after another party, washing glasses she didn't drink from, serving people who didn't see her as human. And Daniel thought he was untouchable. That's always the mistake by nightfall. Marcus met me in a quiet parking lot 5 blocks from the house. He handed me a duffel bag that weighed more than it should have. Inside were pinhole cameras smaller than shirt buttons, audio pickups sensitive enough to hear whispers through walls, a tablet with encrypted feeds, and 6 months of battery life. "Once these are in," Marcus said, gripping my shoulder, "you'll know everything." "I already know enough," I replied. "But I need proof." He nodded. "Then be careful." I drove past the house just once that evening. The lights were on, music again, another gathering. I didn't slow down, because tonight wasn't about confrontation. Tonight was about infiltration. I stopped at a hardware store and picked up the final pieces: contractor clothes, a clipboard, basic tools, the kind of disguise that lets you walk into almost any building without a second glance. By midnight, the party noise had faded. At 2 in the morning, I parked near the beach access and stepped into the darkness. 12 years of training came back like muscle memory. I moved toward the house I once bore with pride, now preparing to expose it for what it had become: a crime scene. At 2:17 in the morning, the ocean wind carried salt and silence across Ocean Boulevard. I came in from the beachside, scaling the low wall with the ease of habit. The lights were mostly off now. The party crowd had gone home. The laughter was gone. What remained was something heavier. I crossed the lawn barefoot, feeling the cold grass under my feet. I didn't want a sound, not a click, not a scrape. When I reached the kitchen window, I slowed. That's when I saw her. My mother stood at the sink, shoulders hunched, washing champagne glasses by hand. No music, no television, just the soft clink of glass and the sound of quiet crying. She wore a thin, worn nightgown. Her feet were bare on the tile. Her hands trembled as she scrubbed, pausing now and then to wipe her face with the back of her wrist. I gripped the window frame until my fingers ached. I wanted to break through the glass, wanted to call her name, wanted to tell her everything was about to change. But if I revealed myself now, Daniel would erase evidence, lawyer up, and twist the story until I became the villain. So I watched. She finished the dishes slowly, dried them carefully, turned off the light. Then she didn't go upstairs. She walked toward a small door near the utility room and opened it. Stairs led down the basement. I waited until the house was still. No footsteps, no voices. Just the low hum of appliances and the distant crash of waves. The back door lock was cheap. I picked it in seconds. Inside, the house smelled wrong. Expansive cologne, alcohol, something rotten beneath it all, like neglect wrapped in luxury. I moved room to room, placing cameras with practiced efficiency in air vents, smoke detectors, decorative plants. Above the dining chandelier, near the living room couch, Daniel favored. Everything fed back to the tablet in my bag. Then I reached the basement. I'd designed that space years ago. Entertainment room, wine storage, maybe a home gym, high ceilings, good airflow. What Daniel had turned it into made my stomach knot. A cheap drywall partition cut the room in half. Behind it was my mother's world, a twin bed, thin mattress, one lamp, a cracked ceiling that leaked moisture. No windows, no decorations. No dignity. On the dresser sat two things. A framed photograph of me in my dress blues, taken the day I completed SEAL training, and my purple heart. She'd kept them, even after they told her I was dead. Even after everything they'd taken from her. I placed a camera in the vent, hand steady but heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. By 4 a.m. I was back in my rental car. The feeds came online one by one, crystal clear. And over the next 48 hours, I watched my brother become a stranger. Daniel barked orders at her like she was a servant. Jessica threw a full mug of coffee at her because it wasn't hot enough. I watched my mother kneel on the floor, picking up shards of ceramic with bleeding fingers. I watched Daniel host another party. Someone asked about the help. Daniel laughed. She came with a house, he said. Previous owner's mother, or something. Previous owner. As if I never existed. But the moment that nearly broke me came late on the third night. Jessica went down to the basement. Drunk, she stood in the doorway and told my mother she was worthless, that she should be grateful not to be locked in a state at home, that if she ever mentioned my name again, things would get worse. Then she locked the door from the outside. I sat in the dark car shaking. I'd survived war zones, but this was cruelty with a smile. And I knew then this was no longer just about exposing the past. It was about stopping what was still happening. The files arrived just after midnight. 3 encrypted folders dropped onto my tablet like a verdict waiting to be read. They came from the contact who didn't officially exist, the man who'd once told me, if you ever need the truth, call. Opened the first file, Daniel's financial records. That $10 million from my life. Insurance policy hadn't just been spent, it had been disassembled. $2 million sat in a clean investment account, conservative and boring, meant to look innocent. The rest had been scattered like shrapnel. Luxury cars bought and sold within months. Art purchased at inflated prices from galleries that existed only on paper. Fake real estate flips that never changed hands. $5 million converted into gold and stored in a private vault in Las Vegas. Another $2 million evaporated into lifestyle private flights, European villas, club memberships that cost more per year than my mother lived on, and the last $1 million, gone, converted into cryptocurrency wallets layered so deeply they'd take a supercomputer months to untangle. Daniel hadn't just stolen, he'd laundered. The second file was worse. Property records. Using my mother's identity, Daniel had taken out a reverse mortgage on her childhood home in Oregon, then pocketed the money and let the bank foreclose. He'd opened credit cards in her name and maxed them out. Her credit score had been destroyed so thoroughly she'd never qualify for housing on her own. He'd made sure she had nowhere to go. The third file made my hands curl into fists. Medical records. Dr. Richard Kelly's report was a joke wine appointment. Vague notes, Daniel answering questions for her. But buried beneath it were records from my mother's real physician, Dr. Sarah Martinez, VA hospital. 10 years of consistent visits. Patient alert, engaged, excellent recall. No signs of cognitive decline. The last appointment was 6 years ago, right before Daniel filed for guardianship. He'd cut her off from real medical care the moment he got control. I sat back, exhaled slowly, and felt something inside me settle into place. This wasn't chaos, this was a system. Daniel hadn't panicked after I died. He'd planned it. He'd studied loopholes, exploited grief, weaponized paperwork. He'd turned my absence into an opportunity and my mother into collateral damage. I finally understood something important. Daniel didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as smart, and smart men always believe they can talk their way out. Or if anything, that's when the plan became clear. I wasn't going to expose him from the shadows. I was going to let him expose himself. I created a new identity that night. Robert Howell, real estate developer, Seattle-based, clean digital footprint, professional website, business cards printed before dawn. By morning, Marcus had built the rest email accounts, property interest history, financial credibility. At 10:30 a.m., I made the call. Daniel Reed, he answered, voice confident. Mr. Reed, I said, smooth and measured. My name is Robert Halverson. I'm exploring high-value properties in Layula. Your house came up in my search. It's not for sale. I understand, but I'm prepared to offer well above market. Cash, fast, close, silence. How far above? He asked. $9.5 million. The house was worth maybe $7 million. When can we meet? Daniel said. Tomorrow. Noon at the property. I hung up and smiled for the first time in days because I knew exactly what he'd do next. He'd clean, he'd lie, he'd hide my mother, and in doing so, he'd give me the one thing I still needed, a front row seat to his own destruction. The next morning, I watched the house wake up through my camera as Daniel was already on edge by 8 a.m. He was pacing the living room in a press suit, barking orders like a general preparing for inspection. He yelled at my mother to clean every surface, polish every fixture, make the place look like money. This buyer is important, he snapped. If you screw this up, you're done. She nodded without arguing. I watched her work for hours. She dusted the chandelier, standing on a ladder that wobbled with every movement. She scrubbed marble floors on her knees. She wiped glass railings until her hands cramped. Her breathing grew shallow, her back bent with pain. Daniel didn't help once. At 11:30, he pointed toward the basement. Go downstairs, lock the door. I don't want the buyer seeing you. She didn't ask why. She just disappeared at noon. I rang the doorbell. Daniel opened the door wearing a smile so polished it felt rehearsed. Mr. Halverson, welcome. Beautiful place, I said, stepping inside. Hard to find properties like this anymore. It's been in my family for years, he replied smoothly. A lie stacked on top of another lie. We walked through the house while he talked non-stop about renovations he never paid for, artwork he never owned, stories about my late brother. That made my jaw tighten. He was a hero, Daniel said casually. Died overseas. I'm sorry, I replied. Where? Afghanistan. Iraq. Both, I think. He didn't even know where I'd actually been. By the time we reached the living room, I pulled out my tablet. I like what I see. I'm prepared to put down $1 million today as earnest money. His eyes lit up. One thing, I added, I'd like to see the basement. The listing photos didn't include it. A flicker of tension crossed his face. It's just storage, he said quickly. Cluttered, I insist. He hesitated, then led the way downstairs. He showed me the water heater, the breaker panel, talking fast, trying to keep me on his side of the room. I drifted toward the other corner. A door locked. What's in there? I asked. Old furniture, he said. Nothing relevant. I pulled a lockpick from my pocket. I carry tools, I said calmly. 3 seconds later, the door opened. My mother sat on the bed, hands folded, eyes dull. She looked up and something flickered. Confusion, hope. Fear. Who is this? I asked. Daniel, our housekeeper, he replied too quickly. She prefers it down here. I stepped inside. Ma'am, I said gently. What's your name? She hesitated, then whispered, Emma. Last name. She looked at Daniel. He shook his head slightly. Red, she said. I turned toward him. Same as you. Common name. I raised my phone and showed her a document. Emma, do you know this man? The screen showed my name, Michael Reed. Her eyes filled with tears. My son, she whispered. But they told me he died. Who told you, Dana? I removed my glasses, let my voice drop. It's me, Mom. Her face changed in real-time recognition, crashing through years of lies. Michael. She stood, trembling, and collapsed. Into my arms, behind her. Daniel backed toward the stairs. This is a misunderstanding, he said. I can explain. You declared me dead, I replied evenly. You stole everything. And you locked her in the basement. Sirens echoed outside. Daniel froze. I looked at him once. You should have prayed I stayed dead. The sirens grew louder by the second. Red and blue light flickered against the basement. Walls like a warning flare Daniel could no longer ignore. He stood frozen, mouth slightly open, eyes darting between me and my mother as if looking for a version of reality where he could still talk his way out. There's been a mistake, he said, voice cracking. Mike, listen. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the tablet. Actually, I said calmly. There's been documentation. I tapped the screen. The first video filled the display. Daniel was in the kitchen, leaning over my mother, jabbing a finger toward her chest. Use the Polish, not the cheap cleaner. Do you want to ruin everything? His voice echoed in the basement. Stripped of excuses, stripped of charm. The next clip rolled. Jessica hurling, a coffee mug, ceramic exploding across the floor. My mother dropping, turned knees, blood on her hands. Daniel lunged forward. You can't show that I held up a hand. Watch. Another clip. Daniel laughing with friends by the pool. She came with a house, previous owner's mother or something. Laughter followed, casual, cruel, then audio. Jessica's slurred voice in the basement. If you ever talk about your dead son again, I'll make sure Daniel sends you to a stay-at-home. The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel's knees buckled. He sank onto the basement steps, hands gripping his hair. This isn't legal, he muttered. You can't. Oh, it's legal, a voice said from behind me. Sarah Blackwood descended the stairs with 2 uniformed officers. Her expression was all business, sharp and focused. We have warrants, she continued. Elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, insurance fraud, financial exploitation. Would you like me to keep going, Mr. Reed? Daniel looked up at her eyes, wild. I'm her legal guardian, he said weakly. I have paperwork, forged paperwork, Sarah replied. Based on a fraudulent medical diagnosis. That guardianship is dissolved as of 10 minutes ago. The officers stepped forward. Handcuffs clicked shut. Upstairs, chaos erupted. Jessica's voice echoed through the house, screaming, denying, threatening lawsuits, demanding phones and lawyers. It didn't matter anymore. The system had teeth. Now my mother clutched my arm as if I might vanish. Michael, are you really here? I'm here, I said softly, and I'm not leaving. Paramedics arrived moments later. One look at her condition and their expressions, hardened malnutrition, dehydration, untreated injuries. They brought a stretcher. I'll go with her, I said. At the hospital, they ran tests until dawn. Blood work, imaging, cognitive evaluations. No dementia, no confusion, just fear. She remembered everything. They told me you were dead, she said quietly as we sat together. They showed me papers when you never called. I thought maybe it was true I was deep cover, I said. I thought you were safe. She squeezed my hand. You're here now. By morning, Daniel and Jessica were officially charged. Their assets frozen. The district attorney was already building a case strong enough to bury them under decades of sentencing as the sun rose over the city. My phone buzzed with one final message, another file, something Daniel never knew existed. I opened it, stared. A cryptocurrency wallet, one I'd created 15 years earlier. $50,000, now worth more than 80 million. I looked at my mother, and for the first time since coming home, I smiled without anger behind it. The truth moves, slowly until it doesn't. Goods. Once the first charge stuck, everything else collapsed like a poorly built wall. Daniel had spent years hiding behind paperwork, signatures, and silence, but paperwork cuts both ways, and silence only works when no one is watching. Now everyone was watching. The district attorney's office didn't waste time with the footage, the financial trails, and the medical contradictions Sarah uncovered. The case shifted from family dispute to full-scale criminal prosecution. Elder abuse, insurance fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, tax evasion. Each charge stacked neatly on top of the other, forming a sentence that would outlive Daniel's arrogance. Jessica didn't fare any better. The coffee mug incident alone carried serious charges. Recorded threats, psychological abuse, conspiracy, complicity. Their accounts were frozen within 24 hours, cars seized, jewelry catalogued, art removed from walls under court supervision. The gold vault in Las Vegas, locked down pending forfeiture. The house, my house, was immediately placed under judicial review. Daniel tried to bargain. He offered money, blamed stress, claimed my mother had misunderstood everything. It didn't matter for the first time in years. His words meant nothing. My mother stayed in the hospital for a week. Doctors stabilized her, treated the old injury as no one had cared to document, and made sure she ate real meals again. Color returned to her face slowly, like spring after a long winter. She's sharp, one neurologist told me. No signs of dementia, not even early stage. I already knew. What surprised me was how much she remembered. Every insult, every locked door, every time she was told she should be grateful for being allowed to exist. I just didn't think anyone would believe me, she said one afternoon. And I didn't want to lose you twice. That nearly broke me. Sarah worked relentlessly. The fraudulent guardianship was dissolved. Daniel's power of attorney revoked. The deed transfer reversed. All financial authority returned to my mother legally, cleanly, permanently. The insurance company came next. They wanted their 10 million back. They also wanted to know how a man declared dead had just walked into a police station alive. That conversation took time, but in the end, the responsibility landed exactly where it belonged. On Daniel. The money he stole would be repaid with penalties. The IRS followed shortly after. You don't launder millions without leaving fingerprints. And once the audits began, there was nowhere left to hide. By the end of the second week, Daniel's legal team quietly stopped returning his calls. That's when I made a decision. I sold the Loyola house not because I had to, because my mother asked me to. I don't want to sleep under that roof again, she said gently. Too many ghosts. We found something smaller, warmer, a craftsman-style home near the water in 3 bedrooms, a garden, neighbors who waved and brought casseroles without asking questions. The day she moved in, she stood on the porch and cried, not from fear this time, but relief. I feel like I can breathe again, she said. That night, as we sat watching boats drift across the bay, I opened my laptop and showed her the wallet, $83 million. She stared at the screen, then looked at me like I'd spoken another language. That's not real. It is, I said. And it's yours. She shook her head. I don't need that much. You deserve peace, I replied. However much that costs. She smiled then, a real one, the kind I hadn't seen in years, and in that moment, I knew the war was finally ending. Daniel thought the worst part was over once the handcuffs came off and the lawyers took over. It was wrong. The real punishment didn't begin in a courtroom, it began in waiting rooms, holding cells, and sleepless nights where the walls closed in and there was no one left to lie to. While my mother settled into her new home, Daniel and Jessica sat in separate county facilities, both convinced at first that the other would fix this, that money would move, that favors would be called and none came. Their joint defense collapsed within days. Jessica flipped first. She always did when pressure got real. She traded statements for reduced charges, describing the abuse as Daniel's idea, claiming she'd just played along. She handed over passwords, account names, burner phones, even the location of a backup gold deposit Daniel had hidden without telling her. Daniel learned about her cooperation from his public defender. That was the moment he finally broke. He requested a meeting with me through Sarah. I just want to explain, he said. Just you and me. Against Sarah's advice, I agreed, but only with conditions. Recorded room, 2 officers present. No negotiations. When I walked into the interview room, Daniel looked smaller, thinner. The confidence that once carried him through poolside parties and champagne nights had evaporated. You ruined everything, he said quietly. No, I replied. You did. He rubbed his face with shaking hands. You left. You disappeared. Mom needed someone. I sent money every month. You sent money, not yourself. He snapped. I was there. I handled things. You exploited her grief. I said. You told her I was dead. He didn't deny it. She would have waited forever. He said. I needed control. Control. That word told me everything I needed to know. They'll never forgive me, he muttered. You could help. Tell them it wasn't that bad. I leaned forward. You locked our mother in a basement, I said evenly. You made her work for strangers. You stole her life. He swallowed hard. I'm still your brother. I shook my head. You stopped being that the moment you decided money mattered more than blood. He slumped back in his chair. That meeting was the last time I saw him as family. The trial came faster than expected. The evidence was overwhelming. The videos played in court and edited unsoftened. Jurors watched my mother on her knees, watched Jessica's cruelty, heard Daniel's voice dripping with entitlement. There were no gasps, just silence. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty, on all major counts. Sentencing was scheduled for later. But the judge didn't hide his intentions. These crimes represent prolonged, deliberate cruelty, he said. The court will reflect that. Jessica received a lighter sentence, but not light enough to forget. Daniel faced decades. When the hearing ended, he looked back once as they led him away. I didn't look back. That same evening, my mother and I sat in her garden, soil under our fingers as we planted herbs she'd picked out herself. It feels strange, she said, being free. You've always been free, I told her. They just tried to convince you otherwise. She smiled. The sun dipped low over the bay, painting the water gold, for the first time in years. Neither of us felt like we were waiting for the other shoe to drop, but there was still one chapter. Left out, one lesson worth remembering, because justice doesn't end when the doors close behind someone. It ends when the people they hurt can finally breathe again. People think endings are loud. They expect gavel slams, cell doors, headlines, and dramatic speeches. But real endings, the ones that matter, are quiet. They arrive in ordinary moments, when you realize something heavy is no longer sitting on your chest. Daniel was sentenced 3 months later, 22 years. No early release, no special accommodations. The judge cited sustained emotional, financial, and physical abuse of a vulnerable adult and extraordinary breach of familial trust. Jessica received 8. Dr. Kelly lost his medical license permanently and faced his own criminal charges. Every appeal failed before it could find oxygen. And then noise stopped. No more lawyers calling. No more investigators knocking. No more waiting for the next shoe to drop. Just mornings. I retired officially. No more contracts. No more burner phones. I turned in credentials that never officially existed and walked away without ceremony. Some doors close quietly when everyone involved understands. They should. My mother's days became beautifully small. She woke early, watered her garden, Walked along the bay with neighbors who didn't know her past and didn't need to. She laughed more, ate better, slept without fear of locks clicking behind her. Sometimes she still reached for me in the middle of the night, just to make sure I was real. I never minded, and the money stayed mostly untouched. We set up trusts, donated quietly to veteran support programs and elder protection services, places that intervened when families failed. I don't want anyone else to go through what I did, she said. Neither did I. One evening, as the sun melted into the water, she asked me, "Do you ever miss it?" The work. I thought about it. I missed the clarity, I said. Out there, you always know who the enemy is. She nodded. Double quotes. And now? Now I know it's not always the people with guns, I said. Sometimes it's the ones who smile and tell you everything's fine. She took my hand. She came back anyway. I always would have, I replied. I just didn't know what I was coming back to. She smiled, soft and tired and real. You didn't just come home, she said. You saved me. I shook my head. You saved me first, I told her. You raised me right. Everything else was just training. That night, we sat under the stars without talking. No missions to plan. No threats to neutralize. No secrets left to uncover. Just peace. I learned something in the end, something no battlefield ever taught me. Strength isn't how long you survive in war. It's how hard you fight. When the war comes for someone you love. Daniel gambled on my absence. He believed silence meant safety. He believed time erased accountability. He was wrong, because some men don't stay gone. Some men come home, and when they do, they don't bring weapons. They bring truth. And truth, when it finally arrives, never knocks. It walks straight in and changes everything. The end.